Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, everyone. This is the 50th episode of the Going Over Big Time podcast. I am the fantastic Alan, and joined by Mike, Charlotte, and today we're going to talk about very interesting development lately in the world of WWE. But before that, I just want to, because this is sort of breaking news at this moment, just announced by Fightful.com, Tegan Knox, Baron Corbin, and Indi Hartwell um, have either been given their notice or are leaving WWE. In the case of Tegan Knox and Indi, I believe their contracts are expiring
No,
in their. Sorry, Mike, you
that's
want to answer
that's
that?
that's what's happening with Baron Corbin.
Right.
Tegan and Indy were released and
Okay, so
will
they're
have
released
90-day.
and they have a 90 day and they have the 90 days before they
Yes,
can. Okay. But Baron
yes,
Corbin was released from his contract and he's not re-signing one.
yeah. His
Um
contract is expiring, and he will not have a 90-day. So if he wants to continue to wrestle, he
yes.
can do that immediately.
Yeah. Um I mean, kind of just a bit out there. This is not a mass firing as we have known WWE to do in the past.
Uh huh.
Yeah, Mr. Thomas Peastock, I believe is Baron Corbin's real name, is will be free to wrestle as of I guess this month anywhere he
Mm-hmm.
wishes. I will say I don't think either of us really had much opinion on Baron Corbin because he was a heel, but kind of hard to really boo a guy that doesn't really give you any sort of emotional reaction.
Yeah.
However, I will say that some of the characters he played, I think he did it to the best of his ability in terms of what the company asked for. When they said, "We need you to play a guy who literally lost his house, lost his wife and kids, and lost all his income, and just play a poor person." I thought he did
Mm-hmm.
that amazingly. It was probably his best work. Um, yeah, I would have preferred to keep the lone wolf aspect of him, but
Yeah.
I guess they went into a different direction with the Happy Corbin era, which
Uh
really
huh.
wasn't that appealing to me. And I thought, like, just before this announcement of his departure, that he and Braun Breaker had actually very good chemistry on NXT as the tag team champions,
Yeah.
as one of those odd couple tag teams of two guys that don't have a lot in common other than football backgrounds, but they made it work somehow, and it was cut short, and they put Corbin back onto SmackDown after a run at NXT, and unfortunately, they never really got him to do anything other than pal around with Apollo Crews.
Yeah.
And now we've gotten word now that he's not re-signing with the company.
Yeah. So I would say that in the past like year or two, his in ring ability stepped up like a lot, and I was really starting to like what he was doing as far as a wrestler. It's just that they spent so much time under Vince McMahon of wasting him and putting him in these roles where we didn't necessarily dislike him for being a heel. We disliked him because the things he were doing were not good. And they just wrote that off as heel heat.
Yeah, I will. It's an unfortunate asterisk, but he is Kurt Angle's last opponent as an active wrestler. We should try to
Yeah.
remember. As far as I know, Kurt
And
Angle.
it's not, and that's not who Kurt Angle wanted his
Yeah,
last opponent to
it's
be.
it was.
That's
I
and
don't know.
that's again,
Yeah,
that's unfortunate for somebody like Baron Corbin, who probably liked that opportunity and respected Kurt Angle, but Kurt Angle didn't want that to be his last match. He wanted it to be against somebody like John Cena or somebody he
right.
had faced before.
Yeah.
But Yeah, Baron Corbin, especially in the early days of NXT, was different. It was something. He was a big guy that had a lot of great ability, for being a guy that was previously very big. He used to be fat and like gotten a lot better shape to become a wrestler. And once he got to the main roster, things just never worked, and the crowd never wanted to care about him. And yeah, when he went back to NXT to team with Braun Breaker and was having actually really good matches, and even his run with Apollo Crews that didn't really result in anything, but he was having good matches, and that's all we ever really wanted from him. It got to the point where he was, you know, focusing too much on the character and not enough on the in ring. And that's kind of what drove people away.
Yeah, well, hopefully he will find his footing somewhere out there, maybe a TNA run or even on the independent circuit. As for
Yeah.
the now, I guess Indi Hartwell and Tegan Knox, I would say somewhat similar, but not. I mean, Tegan Knox never really picked up steam in on the main roster, and Indi Hartwell's best days were really in NXT. You know, as part of the Way, um, the wedding with Dexter, uh, a brief run as NXT Women's Champion, and as NXT, and she was also before NXT Women's Tag Team Champion. I mean, she progressed really well down there, and then once she moved up to the main roster, you know, same almost the same situation as before with Baron.
Yeah.
Nothing really picked up. She was
And
just on TV as far as I know last week, right? Or even just this past Monday.
so as of this recording, so we're recording this during SmackDown, right before Crown Jewel. SmackDown was pre-taped because they already
Yeah.
traveled. They already traveled to Saudi Arabia. She's on SmackDown tonight. She's wrestling.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So both of these women did not get the opportunity on the main roster. In Tegan Knox's case, she never got an opportunity, literally ever.
I think it
And
was a
and
combination of just
unfortunately,
injuries
well, yes, that's what I was
that
going to say.
yeah.
Unfortunately, she was supposed to win one of the Mae Young Classics, and she got injured. And then she came back and got injured again almost immediately. And it was just so unfortunate and just the worst luck. And this is her second time being fired. So she was previously fired and then brought back. Because if you remember, she was in NXT and then they did she was doing an angle, and then out of nowhere they just started doing this countdown thing for her. And then she showed up on the main roster and then she was gone. And
Yeah, that was weird.
then she came back and did nothing. They brought her back and she was teaming with Natty, which didn't make any sense. And then that just fizzled out. And so she disappeared. She wasn't even working main event. She was doing literally nothing. And it's like, why in her case, I think this is an opportunity to finally get to showcase what you can do. Because as you mentioned, like a TNA would be perfect for her, especially with the way that their women's division is structured. They go out of their way to help other talent to get new names in the forefront. Whereas in NXT, you kind of, I mean, more so now, NXT has more new names in the
Yes.
in
Yes.
the front of the card, but on Raw and SmackDown, you got one heel champion and two baby faces that are going after them, and then you just switch it up every once in a while. It's like there's no heels on Smack. Like there's no baby faces on Raw that matter except for Rhea, and she's injured.
Yeah, that happened just recently, as reported. She, I believe, fractured an orbital bone due to a headbutt spot, and so they
Yes.
wrote her off the show by having her appear on NXT this past Tuesday and having her do a bit where she was laid out in the parking lot of NXT, bloody up by a
Yeah.
visiting quote unquote Liv Morgan and Raquel.
Yes.
Looks like
So
that. Yeah,
on Raw specifically, your only babyface is Rhea
right.
and Natty and Lyra,
Yeah,
and I guess the Kaden and Katana team, but
right. But there's nobody. Yeah,
none of those people are taken seriously ever. Lyra hasn't been
right.
taken seriously since Becky went away.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I feel the same thing is happening on SmackDown because other than Bailey,
Bailey and
there's no
Naomi.
yeah, there's no like strong baby faces, and Nia Jax is the champion there. And now they're as was recording, Crown Jewel will feature Liv and Nia facing each other for this Crown Jewel Championship, which is like an annual thing, a one-off prize that's not going to be defended anywhere else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
we're veering off,
we're veering off, but yes,
but the reason I bring up these,
Tegan and Indi specifically could have been used in these roles. They could have been built up to be baby faces that people care about because they were both very good in the ring and very good at whatever they were given. Indi specifically just randomly getting an NXT title shot because they ran a storyline where Roxanne was depressed or whatever. And then she just came back anyway. She was in the title match that resulted in her losing the title in the first place. Indi got the NXT title for no reason at all, and then she didn't even lose it because she
yeah,
got hurt,
she got hurt, she gave it up, she
and
had
then
like a
called
30
up,
day, yeah,
hurt
and
and
it's like
called up.
right.
And it's like you didn't even bother to give her the proper run with the belt. You just gave it to her for no reason when you could have just not taken it off of Roxanne at the time. But then she goes to Raw and she's teaming with Candice and they're just losing all the time.
Well, Candice, at least, is now the WWE Women's Speed Champion.
Yeah, because that matters.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, best of luck to Indy Hartwell and the Tegan Knox and Baron Corbin. Hopefully, Indy can do a run on the Indies as Indie Wrestling, as her social media handle is labels her, which actually leads us to our main topic, one of our main topics for tonight. It was this week that WWE announced that they are launching what they call a indie wrestling development program. I'm just going to read out the press release that was issued on October 29th in its entirety. WWE today announced the launch of a first of its kind developmental program designed to provide up and coming independent wrestlers a pathway to a potential career in WWE. The program will be called WWE ID, short for WWE Independent Development. WWE ID is the latest in our efforts to identify and support the journey of up and coming wrestlers, in turn, raising the profile of and strengthening the independent wrestling ecosystem, said WWE Chief Content Officer Paul Triple H Levesque. Following the 2021 launch of WWE's Next in Line program, WWE ID has been constructed to support independent wrestling prospects and wrestling schools with world-class training, development, and mentorship. Under the program, WWE will provide prominent independent wrestling schools with the WWE ID official designation, with the goal of providing new trainees and existing talent at these select institutions with enhanced developmental opportunities. The schools are Booker T's Reality of Wrestling, based out of Houston, Texas; Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory in Atlanta; Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy in Iowa; Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center up in New Hampshire; and Knox, that's Knox OKX Pro Academy in Los Angeles. They are the first WWE ID independent wrestling schools to earn the official designation. Additionally, WWE ID will identify top independent wrestling prospects with an official WWE ID prospect designation and support their developmental journey by providing financial opportunity and assisting with training, mentorship, and development, including access to world-class facilities, best in-ring class training, and athletic trainers, and more. WWE ID will give fans the opportunity to follow the paths of these standout prospects on the independent wrestling scene through curated behind the scenes content, as well as highlights and matches showcased across WWE's social platforms. Um, Very interesting idea. There is already a Twitter account called I believe it's called WWE ID, and they sent this random tweet out the other day, or was it today?
It was literally hours
Yeah,
ago.
it was today on November 1st. It was a hashtag number 20 WWE ID, and it's a set of eyes.
Yeah.
And
And nobody's been able to confirm who they are.
frankly, Mike,
But
I looked at this a little bit. The eyes kind of look like you for a second. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it could be so. What my point is, it could be anybody.
yeah. Nobody's really been able to confirm whose eyes they are. People
Yeah.
have speculated, but there's no confirmation, obviously. But this is a very significant thing because of how this will affect independent wrestling as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Then and there's people that are discussing this obviously in multiple facets, but like one in particular thing that I saw was like if WWE is going to brand indies, they need to make sure that the branding isn't thrown in like similar fashion as like lowballing wrestlers to work at other indies. Like, because if you're going to put the WWE logo or ID brand on an independent wrestling show, but you're going to expect them to go somewhere else, like if they want to go somewhere else that isn't WWE branded, it's going to cause conflicts or or cause money issues with said independents. It's and it's weird because like some independent wrestling companies will ask wrestlers not to work at a competitor, and it's like so if I work for Booker T's wrestling company, that means if he doesn't want me to work at somewhere else in Texas, I can't.
Hmm.
Like, you know, and the same thing with like if I work for Black and Brave and there's another independent in Iowa, I can't go to that independent, something like that. That's something that needs to be addressed. That and I feel like that's something
Yeah.
that is
I
going
mean,
to play
I
a
mean, it.
factor.
Yeah, it's very different from I think past WWE and other promotions relationships. I mean, I'm just thinking way back when as far back as the late 90s, I think WWF at the time had sort of like partnerships with certain Mexico and Japan promotions. They brought in some luchadors from time to time. I remember, I think, Taka Michinoku, who was essentially eventually signed by WWF, but he was like they had some like they had like a brief light heavyweight division, but I think they drew in some guys from Mexico and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they had sort of feeder system by way of a Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and they had like a territory, and they still had like a developmental in Texas. I mean, sorry, Memphis. And then you had OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. They had a prior relationship with WWE, and then I think fast forwarding a little bit, just thinking of how Progress. I think our friends over in the UK, they talk about Progress a lot. Progress had a brief thing going on with WWE as well as ICW and I think Evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of fizzled out when the pandemic started, so I don't think they were picked up again. Or Evolve, I'm not really sure if they're still running.
ICW is still around. Evolve is not.
Yeah. Progress is still around. They've essentially ended their relationship with the World Wrestling Entertainment.
Hmm.
This is at this point, it's too soon to tell how different this relationship will be in terms of with the prior ones. Most of the schools here listed are, as far as I know, Reality of Wrestling is its own promotion. The Nightmare Factory, my understanding is under Cody Rhodes, is really a training facility.
Hmm.
That's how it operated when Cody was still with AEW. Uh, I guess a similar format with Seth Rollins' operation in Iowa.
Yeah, and I believe that one of those is Rikishi's. I don't remember which one, but
Yeah, I'm not sure which one either.
uh,
I mean,
I would
I
assume
would
it's the California one,
I would
but
I would say so too. I think so because I
yeah,
do believe he's based out of LA.
yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'd be curious. This ID designation. I mean, but this is a historic first. The first time that they've sort of acknowledged independent wrestling and is actually trying to say they want to help work with them by providing financial incentives. They mentioned like best in class training, and I think there is some benefits to that. I think back to what Stephanie Fakir recently said at the NXT Halloween Havoc in that tag match. She did this spiral moonsault thing
It was
off the
like
top
it was
rope,
a corkscrew moonsault. Yeah,
corkscrew moonsault, and she has stated that I had not been able to train properly to figure out how to do this move until WWE helped me out. So I think there is maybe some benefits in terms of maybe training and in maybe world class facilities with advice from some of the seasoned professionals. Um, but yeah, if this extends beyond just these specific schools where they're looking for people or they're training up their next crop of superstars, but they're also looking for other indie wrestling promotions and just looking at individual people and just saying, okay, you're a WWE ID guy or a girl. We're going to keep an eye on you. Um, yeah, but if they start saying, yeah, you can't work GCW or this other thing, um, that might be
well,
problematic.
well,
But I
yeah.
think it also depends on the person's preference at that
Well,
point.
that comes down to the financial side of it, because if they want to work somewhere that's paying them more than what the WWEID brand would pay them, but they can't, then that's a problem. And that, I think, is going to be the big thing that people need to look into when going to these specific schools, I guess. Um, because there's a lot of prominent people in coming out of each of those, and people that are in WWE now that came out of those schools, and in AEW that came out of those schools. So it's really a wait and see kind of thing, I guess. How is this going to affect some of the bigger indie promotions? I mean, I don't think it's going to affect GCW at all. Maybe it will a little. Maybe there's some talent there that they see, like, that they would want, but I don't think GCW would go as far as to want the WWE brand associated, even if they are friendly.
Yeah, but I guess it may sound like a new idea because it's so different from what they did before, but apparently it's been going on for a couple of decades. Tommy Dreamer, when he was interviewed, said he recalled hearing pitches about this like decades ago, dating back to when yeah, this has been talked about within the WWE when I ran the developmental system around 2004. Dreamer said to Wrestling Inc. Probably took 20 years to get this going. But it's a change in the right direction for a lot of reasons, Dreamer said. So there is, yeah, you got people who are thinking it's positives. I was listening to a podcast the other day on WrestleNomics. They were interviewing the promoter of a promotion based out of Ottawa, Canada called C4.
Heard of
Um,
it? I've heard of
Yeah,
it.
he was pretty. I don't recall exactly specifics of all he specifically said, but I think that guy was a bit worried because he's like, yeah, I think to along the line of what you raised, Mike, before is like, yeah, like are these guys if they get this branding or this tag on them, are they not gonna be allowed to work this or not gonna be allowed to work that? And then at that point, are they
Yeah,
just like are they just they're not? Are they really an independent
yeah.
promotion? Or
And I
are they
mean,
really an indie wrestler? Can they really call themselves that anymore?
and also I would credit Fightful specifically for raising a lot of these questions because obviously Fightful is one of the more reliable outlets out there, and I think that they have a grasp of what's going on to an extent. Um, so yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting how this affects independent wrestling. I don't think it'll affect AEW a whole lot. I know that AEW has indie wrestlers that come in once in a while locally. Obviously, so does WWE to time after time. But maybe if AEW goes to Houston, somebody from reality or wrestling probably won't be allowed to work AEW.
Well,
And
that's a possibility, but is reality of wrestling the only promotion out of Texas
oh
that's
no, not at all. That's I'm just saying.
so, I
That's
mean, the
that
other thing the other thing that bouncing around my head is that if essentially is this where the industry is going to go towards in the far off future? Because now you have WWE and AEW, you would be you'd be naive to say that AEW wouldn't think about doing a similar kind of thing.
of course
Not saying they may offer this same level of financial incentive, but maybe perhaps even just the same sort of like
exposure.
exposure. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think they did that before. I think like even like during the pandemic when they were still running, AEW Dark, right?
Well, they
There's
had a lot of
no independent wrestling going on. So
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
so they had a lot of independent wrestlers out of Florida or that were not in Florida that
yeah,
went to Florida just to work there.
right, yeah.
Um, so again, it's very early, so we don't really know the ins and outs of how this will affect independent wrestling as a whole, or if it'll even affect other big companies. Since WWE kind of still has um, a relationship with like TNA, for example, maybe you're gonna see more uh, WWE uh, in like Maple Leaf or
Mm,
so, something like that. Um, there was a lot of AEW people around Maple Leaf,
yeah.
but is that going to play? Is that going to play into that also? Are AEW people not going to be allowed to work certain indies because WWE will have their brand on it?
I think at this point it's too soon to tell. From what
Yeah,
I
of
understand,
course.
Scott Damore's whole vision for Maple Leaf Wrestling is that they're not doing like a weekly show; they're doing like a one-off show for now, and that'll be like they'll have to now they have the content that they can use to promote, and then I
Well,
guess he's
Maple
working
Leaf
behind the
was
scenes.
Maple Leaf was just by example because there's a lot of
Yeah,
TNA. There's a lot of TNA integration in
yeah,
Maple
yeah.
Leaf,
Of course,
and TNA's been working with
right,
WWE.
right.
We just had a TNA pay per view that had a WWE person on it.
Hmm.
So Maple Leaf was just my first example, but
Right.
as I mentioned, there was a lot of AEW integration in Maple Leaf as well.
Yeah.
So um, I don't know. I I don't think that WWE is going to like. At least I hope WWE isn't going to like try to stronghold independence that and tell them like, oh, if we're gonna have our name on this, then I don't want to see Ricochet here, kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean, until until such time as WWE potentially adds, for example, Maple Leaf Wrestling as a WWE ID developmental, then it's not. This is all kind of speculation at this point.
Oh,
I
of
mean,
course.
yeah. I mean, they started with these five places that are really regionally based and more really just training facilities in like a local area. So it's not like another. They're not adding like another national promotion or of sorts, as far as I can see. Um, I mean, it's an interesting like evolution because they have this next in line program where they're training non wrestling
Name,
based
yeah,
athletes
name,
and
image, and
teaching them how to
likeness.
wrestle. And
Yep.
now they have this other feeder system where they have established wrestlers that they have that they can sort of like keep an eye on, help with their growth and training, and then eventually,
Yeah.
if they reach that point, sign them a contract.
But also, you
Yeah,
have to think
and
about
they
like,
also still have NXT. So
but you also have to think about this. Like, some of the best wrestlers in the world got to be the best wrestlers in the world because they didn't go to WWE.
mm,
So
yeah, that's
you're
another point. Yeah,
you're saying that the WWE way is the right way, but the others aren't. And I'm
I,
not saying you specifically. I'm talking
yeah,
about the
yeah,
situation.
right.
Um, you're so WWE is essentially saying with this program, we could teach you the right way, but just because it's your right way doesn't mean it is the right way. Some people learn differently. Some people want to learn differently. Like the example that you used, where Stephanie said in that interview that she couldn't fully learn how to do that corkscrew moonsault without WWE's uh, training facilities help. That isn't on. I don't think that's on the people that trained her. I think that's just how she adapted to learning it. I don't think that that's going to be the same for everybody. I don't think that if like I'm trying to think of a young up and coming independent name, but like if somebody who's new to the business is working the indies right now and AEW has their eye on them, if WWE has their eye on them, they think that they're going to do better just because they're in WWE. We don't know that.
Yeah, and again, I think this is really a sort of case by case basis. I'll cite another example, like not somebody who's been on the not somebody who was just off the independents. I look at a guy like AJ Styles when he debuted in WWE, what 2016. He already had like a
Uh,
decade and a half of experience under his belt. The
more than
moves
that.
that he is known for, he learned outside of the WWE system, as far as I know. And I
Yeah.
think that was a rare exception where he was allowed to just be AJ Styles because he's AJ Styles and everybody knew he
Well,
was.
yeah, and he
I look at the
wouldn't have that.
similars. Yeah, I look at Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley right now, who just signed to WWE after 20 plus years as the Motor City Machine Guns. I mean, the stuff they did is the standard that other tag teams have adapted to across the industry. Um, I think even their finishing moves even kept the same name that they had on when they had it on TNA.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this might benefit some people that feel in their personal preference that maybe I'm not saying WWE is saying that this is the right way. Maybe it's just saying that look, this is
Well,
the WWE standard. If you are interested, we can help you out. And I
I
think that's what they're offering. And I
yeah.
think that's what will appeal to some, may not appeal to others. And that's healthy competition as far as I
Well,
can
I took
determine.
it as the way that it was worded that
Mm.
WWE said that their way is the right way. And I don't think that that's fair to say. I don't, because to some people it might be, but to others it isn't. Um Kenny Omega didn't, for example, hated the WWE system, didn't want to be in it, and left, and is now one of the best wrestlers ever. So just by that example alone, and as you mentioned, AJ Styles, the list of people that are legends in the business of wrestling and never have worked in WWE. is very long. And they didn't get to they're not, and it's not because they went to WWE that they are legends. They were already really good at what they do. So I don't know if, and yes, some people, WWE is the goal. Some people, that is still the case.
Right.
But, and that's not going to be the same for everybody.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, this is really still a very new story.
Of course.
Another thing is, I guess, money. Money is always an underlying factor in these kind of things, and when you've got WWE money thrown around in the mix, then
Yep.
it's always gonna factor into some people's decisions in life, and we'll have to see what happens because right now it's still really a very new growing thing, and until we get more information, this is I think I don't
Yep.
know unless there's anything else to add. I think this is as much as
Yeah, we'll keep an open mind
keep
on
an
it.
open mind on it.
Keep
Yeah,
an eye out to see how this goes, how it affects WWE, how it affects independent wrestling, how it affects all of wrestling. But um, let's just wait and see.
yeah. And then I guess obviously we're a wrestling podcast, but sometimes when you do a wrestling podcast, you can't help but mention that 800-pound gorilla in the room, Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. It was announced on a report this week that apparently Vince McMahon might be starting up a new company after his tenure with WWE. As reported under Fightful, Vince McMahon is working on setting up a company post his tenure with the company that he had basically owned for 40 years. The company is being described as a new entertainment hub company and will reportedly develop and produce film and television productions. The company will reportedly focus on fiction and non-fiction projects, and there are no plans to launch anything similar to WWE. Former WWE's former chief operating officer Brad Blum, as well as Kristen Poultry, who was WWE's liaison to Hollywood, are reportedly working with McMahon in preparation to launch this company. Kevin Dunn is also reportedly not involved with this project. Oh, surprisingly, yeah, this company will be based out of Los Angeles, and it is planned to be launched if McMahon's legal issues are resolved. So let's just remind everyone, Mr. McMahon is currently under federal investigation. So therefore, the
Yep.
lawsuit that Janelle Grant had filed, my understanding is she agreed to pause the lawsuit for 6 months while the federation was continuing against McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
McMahon resigned from TKO and WWE in January of 2024 this year following the Janelle Grant lawsuit accusations. And has sold off all his stock in WWE as of 6 months ago, probably. Um, yeah, this is a very interesting development.
Yep. And you can go
Um,
back to episode 48 of our podcast where we talked about Vince McMahon extensively.
yes, I
Um,
believe we also discussed his documentary, not his documentary, but the Netflix documentary that was released just
yes.
recently, which was done all long before the accusations came forward. Most of the documentary was really just about him prior to the accusations. Only the last episode of that
Yes.
doc was focused a bit more on the lawsuits
Yes.
and his
So
departure.
the prime thing that you mentioned there is that this is only launching once his legal troubles have gone away.
Yeah,
Now, there is no guarantee that that is going to happen, especially since
no,
there are other instances and other claims. A new one just recently came out about the with the Ring Boy scandal again.
yes, yes,
So, and he was named in that, as was Linda, and there is a lot going on that I don't know that this new venture can even get off the ground.
Right.
Um,
And I know some very few of our listeners might be thinking, if they are thinking really far ahead, if they think that somehow if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again as of November 5th, which is the next Tuesday after we record, that somehow Vince McMahon is going to get some kind of presidential pardon from the Donald. I don't think that will be the case. As far as I know, the best thing Donald Trump would probably do is shut down the federal investigation. Um, the lawsuit that Janelle Grant has filed is not a federal lawsuit. The suit you just mentioned about Linda, his wife, and him being sued um, of allowing the abuse of ring boys back in the 80s and 90s, that is a suit filed in Baltimore County, Maryland. So that is a state lawsuit, as far as I can tell. Um, so yeah, these there are legal issues that are swirling around McMahon, and
and these are going to go on for years.
these are going to
This
go
is
on for
this
years. I don't
isn't this isn't a thing that's going to go away tomorrow or
know.
even in January.
Like
It's going to be going on.
is
This is like and like there's hearings that need to happen. There's all these things that need to happen before Vince McMahon can even consider doing something else in any form of business.
yeah, he doesn't have, as far as I know, he doesn't have his top lawyer Jerry McDivitt anymore. Jerry
No,
McDivitt, I think, retired as far as I know, or he's disassociated himself from defending
I
McMahon.
think he's disassociated, but
I
I
mean
mean,
that sounds more plausible. I mean,
yeah.
at best, the best thing McMahon can do is Vince, because he could probably start his own podcast and maybe just talk shit about whatever is on his mind. That's if he wants to keep his name
Uh,
relevant in the space that is wrestling or whatever in just the
uh,
entertainment field. I mean,
con-
but it
uh,
would be funny, Mike, if we could speculate if this company ever got off the ground, who the heck would like work for him? Like,
want to be associated.
yeah, look, he's not.
Like,
He said he's not doing wrestling. He said he's
yeah.
going to focus on like nonfiction and fictional productions.
Well, and that was his goal all along, right? He always said that he wanted to be in the entertainment business and not the wrestling business.
That's true. That is
So,
true.
and that's why they launched WWE Films. That's why they were producing movies that weren't about wrestling or movies that didn't star wrestlers for a while. That's why Vince McMahon has always been that way. He's always wanted to be in the entertainment business and not the wrestling business. So it's fitting that if he's able to, that he would start a business that has absolutely nothing to do with wrestling. It's not surprising to me. It
But
was getting to the
ironically,
point. It was
yeah.
getting to the point where if he was still in charge of WWE, that I don't think there would be any wrestling in WWE. That's how bad it was getting.
Yeah, you know what? It's been such a refreshing period with Triple H in charge in WWE and
Yes.
booking that we somehow almost forgot some of the things that happened under Vince, like the zombie lumberjack match, or you know, I don't know,
Kennel
whatever.
from Hell. Kennel
Yeah,
from Hell.
uh,
Punjabi Prison. Um,
oh my
any
god,
bad gimmick that you could think of was a Vince idea that he thought was a good idea because it was entertaining. Not entertaining to the people watching, entertaining to him.
yeah,
Because, especially the last few years, you can go back and think about stuff that was happening in 2019 where Vince thought it was a good idea and not a single fan wanted that thing.
well, yeah, I remember the one part where Baron Corbin was chained to a post and Roman Reigns and the Usos dumped dog food on him.
Yep.
Um,
Vince
which was
loved
a
that.
response to Roman being had dog food dumped on him by
Oh
Baron
yeah.
Corbin.
And
So
that
yeah,
was
both yeah.
that's a perfect example of something that Vince loved that nobody wanted.
Yeah, the man really loved a lot of poop, dog poops crap, or like peeing or pooing, anything related to like bodily functions, and obviously we know from what we've heard the last year or so that obviously he's a bit of a freak in terms of
Yep.
anyway.
So
But
it's
you know
not
what?
surprising.
Don't, and I won't be surprised if Vince has built relationships over the decades with many really prominent people. I mean, I would be completely not surprised if Hulk Hogan is like the first signee for his new company. Hulk Hogan is tailor
Watch him get
made.
Harvey Weinstein involved. Watch
Hulk
him get.
Hogan is tailor made for this. The Undertaker, I still believe has a modicum of respect, but I think he would maybe do like a one off kind of thing.
Well, John Cena would do it.
Maybe
John Cena would do it.
Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, formerly known as still known as Kane, probably would be.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's
don't count out the if he's not the president, don't count out the Donald. He'll pop up eventually.
Oh yeah, some new version of The Apprentice.
Yeah, like once he's not running for president anymore, and hopefully, he's got to find some way to either keep himself relevant. I mean, there are rumors that the Trumps might just leave America entirely, but I don't think so. I think they'll hang around.
I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, but yeah, this yeah.
But yes, we're joking a lot here because it's just so unlikely, I think, in our eyes that this project is going to go anywhere because Vince is going to have legal troubles for a long time. And it's just he can't help himself. He needs to be talked about. He needs to be the center of attention. He needs people to be talking about him. He cannot help it. He cannot just go away. The only way that's going to happen is when he's no longer with us. And who knows when that's going to happen. I don't want anybody to die. But that's what the point is. Vince McMahon he can't just go off into the sunset. He can't. He needs to be involved in something. He cannot help it.
Yeah, I mean, even in the Netflix doc, he said it himself. Look, why would I retire? I just, retire. If you retire, you just die off. You might as well keep going. And I think in a more positive context, that's a very inspiring message to a lot of people who are a little older in their years and want to keep an active lifestyle and just want to contribute to society. This is an extreme example that I don't think he's really contributing to society.
So, as an example, like when he was still running wrestling for like the last 5 years, there would be a lot of reports out there of him suggesting things that they did the previous week because he forgot that they happened. And is he going to do that with whatever this new project is? Is he going to get a new project off the ground and be like, oh yeah, we should do blah, 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 a reality show about this, and then suggest the same exact thing a week after it premieres because he doesn't realize that they already started airing that thing? Oh, I don't watch that. Is it going to be the same thing? Is he just going to do what he did in the last few years in WWE, just not in a wrestling aspect? And who wants to see him do other things? Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, if any indication, but from what he did when he was still producing wrestling, he does not understand what is entertaining in the modern era.
No.
Right? You talk about somebody who's just siloed in his own universe and only thinks of something entertaining because it entertains him. So it will be very curious unless he delegates to some actual professional person who's produced actual entertaining shows. I'm just throwing a name out here, like a Mark Burnett, for example. The guy who did The Apprentice. Unless he actually delegates to someone who understands the entertainment business and knows what people actually want to watch. because otherwise
Mhm.
we are just going to see a thing that might just churn out clusterfuck after clusterfuck, and it's you know, if it ever launches, we'll be just counting down the days when it gets shut down, like the XFL. You know,
Yeah, and he failed at the XFL twice. And
what World
the second
Bodybuilding Federation?
the second time obviously wasn't his fault, but the first time definitely was, because he just couldn't, again, he just couldn't help himself, because he like Donald Trump hated the NFL so much because it was better than him.
Mm.
So he tried to, I mean, Donald Trump tried to own football teams for decades, and nobody wanted to even bat an eye to him possibly owning a football team. That's why he owned a USFL team, and thought that USFL was going to beat the NFL, which is crazy. And it's the same thing with Vince McMahon. Those two are more alike than you think. And I'm trying not to go on a political tangent here, but like, both of them are just the type of person that can't help themselves. They need to be the center of attention. They need to be involved. They need everybody to agree with them, or they are the problem.
Yeah, it's very alpha male. You know, it's an alpha male personality. It's a narcissistic level of just self indulgence that you know, no modern executive of any company really should have if you're looking to build your business and grow
Oh,
your company
well,
successfully.
nothing that was wrong with WWE was Vince's fault. It was everybody else's fault.
Right.
They weren't losing audiences because of Vince. They weren't they weren't alienating fans because of Vince. In his eyes, he thinks that it's our fault because we didn't agree with what he wanted. And that's the worst way to think.
Mm. Well, I don't know what else to say. I mean, you know, I don't think good luck is the really word I want to use in terms of like what if Vince ever gets this venture off the ground. I mean, I would be interested in just watching it with popcorn and just seeing when is this thing gonna drive itself off the cliff. I think that's the way I would approach it. Um, because we know nothing about this at the end of the day yet. It's just a thing that was announced. Whether it
Yep.
even gets off the ground, we don't know the key people behind it, other than some of Vince's former flunkies are helping him. That's all at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pipe dream, whether it even happens.
Yep.
So it was interesting to talk about in a week where we haven't had any major shows happening yet that we could review. Um, other than Crown Jewel and Survivor Series and the Full Gear, those haven't happened yet.
Yeah. But I think we can both agree that, like, if you haven't, go out of your way to watch Maple Leaf Wrestling, because even if there was some things on there that were absolutely atrocious, there was actually a lot of good stuff on there. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wrestling out there. The AEW and WWE aren't the only ones. They aren't, and you can watch TNA and have a good time. You can watch ROH and have a good time. Sometimes you can. There's a lot of wrestling out there, so broaden your horizons. Watch something new. Watch something different. But you can also just continue to watch what you enjoy watching, and try not to hate other people for not liking that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anywho, I think that's enough for today. And
Mm-hmm.
if nothing else you want to add, or because
Just the usual. Go to our social medias. Go to our linktree / going big time podcast. All of our social medias will be there, as well as Twitter account for the podcast, Facebook page, the YouTube, everything on how to listen to this podcast if you prefer to listen to it. And yeah, that is going to do it for me. This is we've done 50 of these. I think we've
Yep. This is our 50th
probably
episode.
would have I would say that we're just getting started, but yeah.
Yeah, and with that, signing off. Oh, shout out to our friend Tanner. I hope he's doing okay. Hope to see him back here soon and sooner than later.
Oh, and just to add, goodwill wishes to Chris Bay.
Oh yes.
Unfortunate neck injury that is going to keep him out for a very long time, and that guy rules. So support Chris Bay.
Yes, there is a GoFundMe set up for him. A number of other sites are selling merch where proceeds will go to Chris and in his recovery. So, and with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. Have a good night.